Employee bag checks suck. Sorry if this is badly written. I am on mobile and I am a bit baked and my fiance just told me this story belongs on here. About 8-10 years ago I worked for a major chain drugstore. Employees couldn't leave the store without a manager or supervisor digging through their bags first, and they often made you turn your pockets out if possible. It annoyed me because they did take 10 minutes to get to you and they would only let you take the last 5 minutes of your 15-minute break. So I decided to duck with them a couple times. Once, I specifically purchased the normal stuff I carry in my purse all from my store. I wrapped everything in receipts. Like you couldn't even see what anything actually was because this is that store that gives you 3 feet of coupons on every receipt. And I used packing tape so none of it was useful. The eye roll was worth it and they wanted to write me up, but technically I had followed policy so they couldn't. Another time, I specifically purchased all competitor store brand products. Nothing that could possibly be purchased at our store. All house brands from other companies. They were very annoyed and for the most part after that, they only glanced in my bag without touching anything anymore. Honorable mention was when I worked Christmas Day with a fever of 103F and they refused to send me home, so when they checked my bag on that break, it was filled with used tissues. They did let me go home about 30 minutes early after that one. Edit: I feel obligated to acknowledge that this blew up overnight a little bit. That is fun. Thanks for the awards. I have to say, as I mentioned in the comments, I was too young and inexperienced and used to being treated shitty to realize how ducked up the whole job was, and by the time I actually understood that I had legal ground to stand on, it was too long ago to prove anything. I worked there when I was 20 and I am 31 now. Oh, here is a too long didn't read of what to expect in the comments. It is dildos all the way down, baby. I believe if you were in California, the ruling is that bag checks are still time on the clock. I recall Apple Retail got in shit with that policy. Might be worth looking into. Peace. If I remember correctly, the rationale was that it was still time, that the employee was under the employer's control and the employee was not free to leave. Therefore it did not count as clocked out time. That job pulled a lot of bullshit that I could have taken legal action against. But I was young and didn't know better. I actually still have tendonitis in my wrists for a work injury that they refused to report or acknowledge and would not allow me time to get checked out. Wow, that is definitely illegal. US employment everywhere. Bag check. Why yes, please examine this full satchel containing nothing but sex toys and objects that can be used as sex toys. Did I mention that the disinfecting process only takes place immediately prior to use? One wonders exactly how much actual theft by employees they had versus how much time and effort was expended. I did HVE started bringing a jar of mayo to work just to mess with them. Reminds me of an old joke I heard. If I may, it is a long one. There was once a border customs inspector. His job was to inspect cars for contraband being smuggled into the county. Drugs, cash, exotic animals. He had seen it all. One day, he gets a call. Andre is headed his way. The inspector groans. Andre was a notorious smuggler, known to just about every agency and watch list imaginable, but the sneaky bastard had never actually been caught smuggling anything. And so it comes that Andre drives up to the border checkpoint in a shiny new fancy car. The inspector, determined to catch him in the act, waves him over to the inspection area. Andre complies, grinning from ear to ear. The car is inspected through and through. The dog is brought in, the doors x-rayed, the seats poked and prodded. Everything is triple checked. The only thing unusual the inspection team finds is 3 large jars in the trunk. 1 jar of mayonnaise, 1 jar of honey, 1 jar of broken glass. The jars are of course tested thoroughly. The mayo is prodded and stirred, checking for anything hidden within. The honey is tested and samples taken. Each fragment of glass is checked to make sure it is not really a diamond. The whole process takes hours. Andre is completely unruffled, taking a nap. Finally, after much exasperation and not a whiff of anything illegal, the inspector lets Andre go on his way. A week later, Andre shows up again with the same 3 jars in his fancy car's trunk. Aha, thinks the inspector, he must be trying to wear us down so that he can sneak something through later. So the car is given all the same tests again. The contents of the jars are poked and prodded to no avail. Another week later, Andre is back again, still grinning widely. The inspection goes the same as the first 2. The same thing happens when Andre pulls up the next week, and the week after that. The inspector tries everything. New equipment is brought in. Dog sniffing every inch. Nothing. Every week, Andre shows up in his fancy car with the 3 jars in the trunk, and every week, The inspector has to let him go. The inspector is tearing his hair out. He is certain that Andre is smuggling something. He tries everything, but each week he sees Andre drive away in his expensive car. After a year, Andre stops coming by. Rumor has it he was now smuggling exotic parrots into Liechtenstein. The inspector sighs in relief, but is still bothered. Many years pass, and the inspector retires. He is relaxing in Madrid when who does he see across the bar but Andre, a little more grey, a bit softer in the middle, but it is definitely him. Andre greets him as an old friend, buying the ex-inspector a drink, and soon they are laughing about old times. Finally the inspector leans close and asks, "Listen, I know you were smuggling something. It is long past the statute of limitations, and we are nowhere near my old jurisdiction, so I will ask you, what the heck were you smuggling?" Andre grins broadly, takes a sip of his drink, then leans close and whispers, "Luxury automobiles. Nice one. I have heard the version about planes before. I heard about wheelbarrows before, lol." Legend tells of a local company that had a thing about theft. They started bag searches. The company made expensive handbags. One lady had a company bag and was rather proud of it and would show it off to the manager every time there was a random bag search. One day the manager notices that her bag is one that has not been released to the market yet. Turns out she had been stealing one bag a day by putting her stuff in it and walking out the door in plain sight, like the guy riding his bicycle over the border every day with a bag of sand over his shoulder. They went through the bag of sand, x-rayed the bike frame, searched and x-rayed him. They couldn't figure it out. He was smuggling bicycles, wheelbarrows. When I first heard that joke, it is stealing wheelbarrows from a construction site company store. Bicycles need to be smuggled across borders because of taxes. Who check the supervisors' and managers' bags? Either managers and supervisors, usually, but they would sometimes make the cashier, usually me, do it so they didn't have to wait. That double standard was such bullshit, so just say no. You are not a manager and it goes against policy. They won't wait, they will cancel it all. I miss bag checks. I was the employee everyone trusted, but we would still do routine bag checks at night in case the district manager did a surprise visit, which they did. My company had big trust issues with their employees, but the problem was the customers. I was the only employee who would leave my purse in the locker room without a lock in the warehouse. I always had co-workers tell me to put it in the office because customers would always trespass. I would then show them my empty bag. The only time it was full was when I took lunch. People started buying clear bags so you didn't have to open the bag to see contents. Quick look and a pass. We had to use clear bags when I worked at the casino. I have a practice of my bag being basically full of tinier bags that hold categories of things. Being bag checked was always fun because I would start unloading 5-6 little bags of cords, toiletries, writing utensils, etc., and opening all of those little bitches up to show their contents. And usually someone would go, "You are fine, it's fine, you can stop," but I would always do it all the way. I'm Alicia's compliance style. I love you. Thank you so much for doing that. If only everyone inconvenienced them as much as you have, then maybe it would not be so bad. Do you know they still kept going through the motions of bag checking me even though I made it an impossibly tedious task for all involved. I think it was for the cameras, so if something did come up missing they could at least say, "Well, we checked." In the UK, no one is allowed to put their hands in your bag, dig or rifle through it. They can only glance in your bag and or shake it around to see what is in it. If something needed to be retrieved, they did have to ask you to do so and cannot do it themselves. I always quickly glanced in. I didn't really give a shit about bag searches. I had to do them because I was told to. Where was this that you had bag searches? I guess I have never worked in a shop, and that is where it would be most likely. I feel like I should not name the employer bureau. Someone else figured it out somewhere in these comments. I used to be the ASM at a certain retail chain that sells band tees and cheap, edgy jewelry. When we performed bag checks, we could not touch anything in the bag and we could not make the employee wait. The check had to be done immediately when they told us they were ready. It was just in the company policy, but making an associate waste their break waiting for a bag check seems like a good way to get an hour complaint filed against you. Due to a salesman's error, I was working for company ABC in the company XYZ warehouse installing video cards in machines. Literally just open the box, screw in the card, close the box. More than 1,000 machines. But on my first day their security told me I could not bring my tools in because I would not be allowed to leave with them, an electric Phillips head screwdriver. So, I arrived for work and ABC boss asked about my tools and I explained the issue and he undertook a week-long adventure to obtain authorized tools for use in their warehouse. This did mean a week-long delay in the supply chain for XYZ Corporation as well. The thing that really amused me while sitting around for a week was that the tool needed was sold by XYZ Corporation and there were hundreds of them inside the warehouse. I could have stolen one every day and XYZ would have lost less money than the week's delay. Glitter. No, anything but glitter. That shit gets everywhere. I love a good glitter bomb. Thanks, Satan. When I worked at Smith in a train station in London, they would pat us down for stuff that might be stolen. One manager literally patted up and down my legs and asked why my tights had more fabric at the ankles. I told her I was wearing socks under my tights. Distrustful of me, she asked why I was wearing so many layers. I told her working in the storage room under the train station in the winter was too cold without extra layers. She felt around until she was satisfied that I was telling the truth about the extra socks, because it could have been a magazine or chapstick in the shape obviously. Finally, she literally rolled her eyes at me before she let me go. I wish I did been more malicious about compliance in this job. It would be so tempting to store some open safety pins with a pointy end sticking out in the tops of your socks. I feel like a manager patting you down can't be legal. Yeah, I don't even know. I probably should have checked into that. I just couldn't believe how rude they were about me wearing layers for the cold. So much judgment in such a short interaction. So I worked for an online sports equipment retailer for a while, one of the biggest in the world. They had 4 sites about 15 miles apart. I worked for a transport company but subcontracted to these guys to work a specific schedule between their sites, shifting stock around. Theft was a huge issue, and those randomizer buttons when leaving the warehouse, if it buzzed you got searched. Fair enough. However, the security guys always waved me through until a manager seen it and made a whole stink about it. So I would park my little box truck on the loading bay, enter the warehouse and load, then exit the warehouse being searched to make sure I am not stealing, then go to my truck to move it off the bay, close the doors that are still open and drive off into the sunset with 14 pallets of expensive stock in an unlocked truck with no tracker. I suggested they lock and seal the doors on the bay if they are worried I'm stealing. Nah, too much paperwork. Made more sense to search me before driving off with hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of stuff. Heck, even after a pallet of Garmin smartwatches disappeared in transit, they still would not think about updating their process. I would have gone to the sex shop and filled my bag with fuzzy handcuffs, anal beads, a ball gag, laxatives to mess with their heads a bit more, and a condom taken out of its wrapper, a condom over the anal beads with some melted chocolate. I once worked with a guy who used to take whatever he wanted across the border. He worked in a Mexico border town. Mostly it was booze that he didn't want to pay the duty on. He would have it packed under the nastiest dirty underwear. None of the customs people cared enough to dig through it. My travel safe is a pair of clean tighty whities with the front access flap sewn shut. I keep a spare credit card and some cash in it accessed from the back flap. Stain the ass with iodine. Place in plastic bag. Trust me, nobody will steal it from your backpack. I am always more worried about the whole pack getting stolen than someone rifling through it. That is why my stuff goes in a pouch under my clothes. I got some money from a class action lawsuit against my old job. They would do bag checks during break and, at the end of the day, make us clock out and wait in line while they let us out one by one and checked all of our bags. After reading through this thread, I am horrified. A bag search is like this super common. Like no one trusts employees. This is so disheartening. Most places I have worked, and this is in Canada, would just have cameras up in places, and if theft happen they look at the cameras. In the few real jobs I have had here in the US, that is how it was handled. Just cameras. So, obviously it happens, but it is not every company. Look, if you didn't want to handle my lube-covered butt plug, you should have kept your hands out of my bag. Sir, this is a Wendy's. What he does on his lunch break is his business, as long as he washes his hands. What kind of burger do you want, sir? And would you like an upsize? I worked for a company that did the same, but had employees roll a dice and only those who got a 6 had to turn out pockets in their bag. My good friend made it his mission in life to mess with them, so he had fill his pockets with all sorts of trinkets and small items, and he would slowly take them out and lay them out in the table. He then stepped up his game and started stealing the dice, holding everything up but making it impossible for actually check anyone. It is now almost 10 years since either of us worked there, and he still has a collection of dice at home. By stealing the dice was not he proving their point. Every day, an ever-increasing size of dildo I'm training. It have 3 dildos and a pair of sock that I spread toothpaste on. Have fun digging through that every day. Sometimes the sock would be wet. Why is wet? Yay. I am more appalled by wet socks than all the dildos laughing my butt off. I worked at said 3 Feet Receipts company once, never had a bag check, and my manager was a rule stickler. Like, he clocked me out mid-stocking once and kicked me out because you weren't working unpaid overtime and you weren't working off the clock. I don't care if it isn't done and you want to finish. You do not work unpaid. This must be America. What authority do managers have to go over personal items? Bag search. Police can't search vehicles without proper cause or warrant, and management wants to look into all orifices every day. It'd be pissed too, especially about the taking up break time. That should clearly be work time. Or is the manager who searches you also on break time? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing for more videos.